She didn't leave love with a scream. She left with silence. Not because she no longer felt, but because feeling had become exhausting. Not because she didn't care, but because caring had turned into performance. In a world where love is gamified, filtered, and fleeting, modern women are not giving up out of bitterness. They're stepping back out of clarity. Kierkegaard once wrote that despair is not loud, it's quiet. It's when the self quietly drifts away from what no longer feels true. This is that drift. This essay isn't a eulogy for love. It's a mirror for what love has become, and why so many women are walking away, not to escape it, but to remember themselves. 1. The disappearing dream. When love becomes silent. She didn't wake up one day and decide to stop believing in love. It was gradual, like a ceiling leak that goes unnoticed until the plaster caves in. She stopped checking her phone for messages, stopped dressing with the thought of being seen, stopped imagining a future that included anyone but herself. Not because she hated love, but because it kept showing up in costumes that promised connection and delivered confusion. There was no heartbreak, no big ending. Just a silent drift, like a ship that never makes it to shore. And here she is, brushing her hair before the mirror, not with despair, but with a certain acceptance that the kind of love she longed for might never come. Not because she was unworthy, but because the world had forgotten how to love deeply. This is not a story of bitterness. It is the quiet retreat of modern women from the battlefield of intimacy. Not with resentment, but with resignation. Not with war cries, but with whispers. In an age where independence is championed, where freedom is sacred, where ambition is admired, why are so many women slowly, invisibly, giving up on love? Kierkegaard once wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all." And perhaps, that is what love has become, a loss that happens quietly. 2. Kierkegaard and the anatomy of despair. Søren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, gave the world a language for inner turmoil. For him, despair wasn't simply sadness. It was the spiritual sickness of not being true to oneself. Despair arises when we are divided within, when we fail to align who we are with who we pretend to be. Modern women are not retreating from love because they are too strong, too independent, or too career-focused. They are retreating because love, as offered today, demands they split in two. It asks them to be soft, but not vulnerable, nurturing, but not needy, successful, but not intimidating, beautiful, but effortlessly so. The romantic scripts they are handed are filled with contradictions. And Kierkegaard knew, when a person is forced to live in contradiction, despair is inevitable. In love, women are asked to be idealized forms, not real ones. In despair, they quietly abandon the performance. Not loudly, just quietly. Because despair, Kierkegaard reminds us, is a silent illness. 3. The marketplace of intimacy. We live in a time when love has been flattened into algorithms. Swipe right, match, unmatch, ghost, repeat. Desire is commodified, and people become products. Kierkegaard warned against the aesthetic life, the pursuit of surface pleasure, image, and avoidance of deeper meaning. This, he said, would inevitably lead to despair. What he called the aesthetic sphere is where modern dating thrives. In this marketplace of curated photos and witty bios, women become performers on a digital stage. They are both the product and the consumer. And over time, they begin to feel the cost of this performance, the loss of sincerity, of slowness, of real connection. Love, once a sacred bond, becomes a negotiation of attention and availability. Text me when you're free. Let's keep it casual. In such a culture, deep intimacy, flawed, human feels obsolete. So women leave, not with a slam of the door, but with a soft sigh. 4. The death of meaningful connection. What happens when you've been seen too often but never truly known? When you've shared your bed, your time, your emotions only to realize none of it meant anything? Kierkegaard believed that love required a leap of faith, a radical, irrational commitment beyond logic or utility. In a world obsessed with optimization, women are offered no ground to leap from. Everything is conditional, contractual, and measured. And slowly, they stop leaping. They've learned that connection without commitment is hollow, that passion without presence is draining, that love without courage is only pretense. So they choose solitude. Not because they've given up on love entirely, but because they've given up on what love has become. 5. Feminism, freedom, and the price of autonomy. There is a cost to freedom, especially for women. As they rise rightfully into positions of power, autonomy, and voice, they are often met with partners unprepared to love them fully. Partners who long for their strength but resent their independence. Who desire their beauty but fear their intelligence. Kierkegaard spoke of the tension between possibility and necessity. The self is torn between all it could be and what it is bound by. Women today feel this dissonance acutely. They can be everything, yet must choose carefully because every choice feels like a sacrifice. And love, ironically, asks for the greatest sacrifice of all, the surrender of full control. But in a world where vulnerability is weaponized, surrender feels like suicide. So instead, they remain sovereign, alone, but intact. 6. The aesthetic trap, when beauty replaces intimacy. In Kierkegaard's philosophy, the aesthetic life is seductive. It offers pleasure without pain, identity without depth, and performance without cost. But it always ends in despair. Social media has turned femininity into performance art. Women sculpted by filters, angles, and perfected personas. The gaze has become omnipresent and exhausting. When beauty becomes currency, the soul goes bankrupt. Women begin to feel that they are loved not for who they are, but for how well they present. And when intimacy is replaced with image, loneliness blooms in secret. So they retreat into private worlds, quiet friendships, and spiritual paths, places where the gaze is soft and the soul can breathe. 7. The weight of disappointment. She loved. She gave. She stayed. Until staying meant erasing herself. Until giving meant depletion. Kierkegaard defined resignation as the soul's way of letting go without bitterness. It is not defeat, it is a mature sorrow. Modern women are not angry. They are tired. Tired of being mirrors for other people's needs. Tired of playing the therapist, the muse, the fantasy. Tired of carrying the emotional labor while being told they are too much. So they resign. With dignity, with tears they no longer shed, with hope they no longer speak of. Because disappointment, when repeated enough, becomes a quiet philosophy. 8. Radical solitude, a Kierkegaardian resistance. To choose solitude in a world that pathologizes it is an act of rebellion. Kierkegaard believed that the self must first be alone before it can love truly. Love, he said, begins with selfhood, not the lack of it. Modern women are not simply single. They are building lives of meaning beyond romantic validation. They travel alone, write, paint, heal, grow. They are not waiting. They are becoming. And in this radical solitude, there is peace, there is depth, there is truth. Because solitude, chosen freely, is where God whispers. 9. Becoming the knight of faith. In Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard introduces the knight of faith, a person who, despite every reason to despair, still believes in the impossible. She is the woman who no longer chases love, but still believes in it. Who does not beg for affection, but welcomes it when it's real. Who lives fully in the present, yet holds space for the sacred unknown. She is not naive. She has loved, lost, and walked through fire. But she has emerged with grace, with boundaries, and with unshakable faith. Not faith in men, but faith in love itself. 10. In defense of the quiet women. This is for the women who left quietly. Not because they were broken, but because they were brave enough to stop betraying themselves. Who loved too deeply in a world too shallow. Who gave too much in a world that measured love by convenience. Kierkegaard reminds us that the deepest truths are often hidden in the quietest lives. And these women walking alone, soft-spoken, slow to trust carry truths our world has forgotten. That love is not performance, it is presence. That intimacy is not urgency, it is surrender. That to love well, one must be whole alone. So they walk in silence, but not in defeat. In wisdom, in courage, in faith. They are not giving up on love. They are waiting for love to remember itself.